Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 6 of my 2022 reads. This week I read quite a few things, lots of which were short, and I did DNF one thing. Timestamps and content warnings are in the description box below. First, I read 2 issues of FIYAH Literary Magazine, number 18 and number 20. Sush and I, my husband and I, have had a subscription to FIYAH Magazine for a couple of years now, but we are so bad at keeping up with actually reading the issues as they come out. So we're really trying to make a push to go ahead and read those issues, and in particular to catch up on the issues from last year because those stories are eligible for Hugos this year. So we read number 18 and it was very, very solid. I loved some of the stories in this. Some of the stories in this I'm for sure nominating. There was The White Road, or How a Crow Carried Death Over a River by Marika Bailey, which was this beautiful kind of mythological style of story about a crow spirit who is trying to earn her adult name through doing some, adventurous deeds and just the sort of things that she finds and what she is passionate about doing. And it's a beautiful story. I really, really loved it. It was so well written. Also, Rememory by Kristen Reynolds, which is kind of a sci-fi dystopian about a woman who is selling off her memories in order to earn enough money so that she can try to find her daughter who was stolen from her. But some things end up happening, and some of the memories that she got rid of end up coming back to her. And there's so much in this about trauma and about healing, and it was just a really beautifully written story. And the poetry in this was also really solid. Sometimes the poetry just goes over my head, but I really liked the poems in this one. So I gave this volume 4 out of 5 stars. For issue number 20, I actually read this as part of Reija at the Book Finch, who I will link below, their Shorts and Sorcery book club. And so it was great just having another reason to pick up one of these issues. This issue wasn't quite as much to my style. I really liked the theme though. The theme of this one was love, death, and androids, and so I thought that was a really cool theme. But most of the stories were just okay for me. They didn't really necessarily reach me, didn't necessarily like how some of them played out, although there was one story that I thought was a really cool framing type of story. It was The First of Us, the Jordan story by K.S. Walker, and it's done as a documentary, and so you have like interviews with different people talking about basically the first human child raised by sort of these alien robot people, and just getting different people's perspectives on it. And I thought that was really interesting, and I liked the framing device. This issue I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Next, I read 3 books that were published by Levine Querido, which is a publisher that I'm really, really, really enjoying. They do kid lit that is basically focusing on marginalized people or is translating works from other countries. So I just absolutely love reading what they're publishing. And the first of the books by them that I read was A Snake Falls to Earth by Darcie Little Badger. I really enjoyed Darcie Little Badger's debut novel, Elatsoe, and I was really excited to pick this one up, and I was not disappointed. It is just so sweet. Darcie Little Badger writes YA that is so gentle and so focused on friends and family and just doing the right thing in the world. So this story is really interesting. We get kind of 2 perspectives. One, Ollie, who is a snake person. He's a teenage snake boy, living in the reflected world, which is where all of the kind of animal people and spirit people live. So we follow him as he has to leave the nest and grow up, and it's kind of scary in this world, and he's trying to just get by. And then in the human world, we follow Nina, who is growing up and also trying to uncover the mystery of some stories, some myths that her great-grandmother had told her as she was, sick and dying. And so we have these 2 storylines that eventually towards the end of the story come together, but I just really liked both of them. I really enjoyed both the friends that Ollie makes and Nina's family and how everybody just cares about each other, and I loved the mythology in this. It was really, really, really cool. And just there's a lot of themes of kind of ecology and the way that humans affect the world and how that affects the animal people as well. So I just thought this was really a lovely, sweet, gentle story with great mythology. I do think that there were a couple of threads that weren't quite tied up at the end. They just somehow fell by the wayside. So I would have liked to see those tied up. But other than that, I just really adored this. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Another Iván querido book that I read and really enjoyed was Neverforgotten by Alejandra Algorta, illustrated by Iván Rickenmann, and translated from Spanish by Aida Salazar. So this is a really interesting story. It's a middle grade that is, it's not quite poetry, but it is very poetic in the way that it is written. It is set in contemporary Bogota, and it follows a boy who basically is given a bicycle by his parents and ends up loving his bicycle and riding it everywhere, and it kind of just gives him such power until there is one day when he sort of starts falling off his bike and he can't get back on his bike, but his parents and everyone around him tells him, oh, you never forget how to ride a bike, so that can't be happening. But it is happening to him. And so he goes through this kind of crisis of faith where he starts questioning everything around him. If that is a lie, that you can't forget how to ride a bike, where clearly he has, then what else is a lie? And so he kind of starts questioning the truth of the world around him. And he becomes sort of friends with an older woman who's his neighbor, who also has had a lot of things go wrong in her life, and she sort of questions the reality and the truth of everything as well. And so there's just a lot in this that is about really how you form your identity based on what you believe about the world or what you can do, and then if that fails you, then how do you build your world around you? This has such beautiful writing. It's truly gorgeous. It's also, in a sense, kind of abstract. It's almost, I'm not sure if I would say that this is like magical realism, but it has this fantastical feel because of the way that the little boy views the world around him. So it's almost not reality, even though nothing actually magical is happening. Just the way that he views things is so abstract and poetic, and it's just really gorgeous. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, but definitely if you pick this up, be ready for something that's a little bit more abstract and poetic. And the other Iván querido book that I read this week was a graphic novel, Oksi, by Mari Ahokoivu, translated from Finnish by Silja-Maaria Aronpuro. So this is such a beautifully illustrated graphic novel. It is, I believe, based on Finnish folklore and tells the story of a child of a bear spirit. And this child is not like its siblings. This child doesn't look like a bear and seems to have some magic abilities and is very, very needy. It really wants to be with its mother, really wants its mother to like it, but it's got some kind of scary aspects to it, and it really doesn't get along with its siblings either, and is very curious and trying different things. This is an incredibly dark fairy tale, though. There is some real content warnings for just body horror and all sorts of things, but the illustration in this is just so amazing. And a lot of older folklore and myths and things like that are really violent, actually, so that kind of makes sense to me. But really, the way that the illustrations are done, the colors that are used, the way that color is used to imply meaning. Often magic is done in yellow, whereas most of the book is this kind of black and white and gray type of feel. I just thought that this was really, really impressive, both in terms of the kind of myth that is being told, but also just in terms of the artwork. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read some picture books, starting with The People Could Fly by Virginia Hamilton, illustrated by Leo and Diane Dillon. So this is a picture book that is sort of created based on one of the folk tales that was in a bigger collection by Virginia Hamilton. So I would definitely want to go and read that collection later, but this picture book was excellent. So it takes a very kind of foundational folklore that was told by enslaved peoples in the American American South. And it tells of some people who had magic, who basically were descended from people with wings from, Western Africa, and who kind of, when things got just overwhelming on the slave plantations, flew away to freedom. And this story is just really powerful in its messaging and important in terms of kind of the influence I think it's had on a lot of American culture. But also the illustrations in this were just gorgeous. I mean, they were really beautifully illustrated, but also just the kind of detail, the kind of care that went into making all of the illustrations for this made it really, really lovely to read. So I definitely recommend this one. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The other picture book that I read was Nina by Traci and Todd, illustrated by Christian Robinson. This is a biography of Nina Simone, who is an amazing, amazing singer. I really like her music, but it's telling the story of her life from her childhood growing up into her move into music, but also her real civil rights activism. And I didn't realize how active Nina Simone was in the civil rights movement. So this kind of tells her story. I think that the illustrations in this are just so cool. I really like this illustration style, and I just loved the way that the illustrations were kind of integrated into the text as well. So I just thought it was really great in terms of the illustration. The story of Nina Simone's life was very, very interesting, although I found that at times it was almost a little wordy for a children's picture book, or maybe it just didn't quite develop it as a story. It just felt like more of a listing of things for me. So I could have dealt with maybe a little bit more polishing of the way that Nina Simone's life story was told, but even so, I just really enjoyed reading about her and I loved the illustrations, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And then I did have one DNF this week, which was The Best of All Possible Worlds by Karen Lord, which I was so disappointed to DNF, but I just ended up not getting into it. So I was expecting to love this because I had read Redemption in Indigo by Karen Lord before, and it was fantastic. Really loved it. And Angela at Literature Science Alliance has a great review for Best of All Possible Worlds, so I was really excited about this. But it ended up not working out for me, and not in a bad way, but just in a I wasn't into it way. I got to 56% and I had yet to really be engaged in the story. This is the story of basically a future where there are many different kinds of types of humans, and some of them have different abilities, some of them have like telepathy, things like that. And there is a kind of a genocide that happens where a group of these people lose almost everybody, almost all of their kind, and they're trying to rehabilitate their entire community, their entire culture, and they come as a refuge to this other planet. And we follow a woman who is sort of a cultural liaison for them, helping them to figure out what they're going to do. And they really want to kind of intermarry, but they want to intermarry in a way that retains their own culture. So she's helping them go to all of these different communities on the planet and talk to them and see if there's any good fits. So really cool in terms of this sort of anthropological exploration of things, really neat sci-fi, and Angela talks about this about being kind of like a feel-good sci-fi, and I totally get that, but I just was not that engaged. I'm not really sure. I think part of it is that it's very episodic in terms of, they keep going to these different communities, and each time they go to a community, that's just kind of another little vignette. And also I think that even though it is feel good in many ways, there are some like unhappy things that happen, some like intense emotional abuse. There's also some enslavement of people. So it's not like 100% gentle in that, although I think the tone of the book is gentle. So yeah, I thought there was a lot of good about this book, and the truth is I could have kept reading, but it was just not that engaging, and I never really found myself wanting to pick it up. So I've actually been reading this for a couple of months now, just kind of chipping away at it, and finally I sat down and was like, let me read a chunk of this, and I read a chunk and I was still not engaged, and so I thought, maybe this one just isn't for me. Okay, so that is everything that I read and DNF'd this week. If you guys have read any of these, if you're interested in reading them, you have any thoughts, anything at all, just leave me a comment down below.